oh, if you wipe out, if you, man, that's, I don't want to, man, I don't want to advocate for genocide. So I was fighting this giant snake in Octopath. I was thinking to myself, man, what should I talk about in this episode? And the big thing was, boy, do I hate grinding in JRPGs. See, a good chunk of the footage that I have is just regular ass fighting. But the thing is, in order to be able to fight these bosses, I need to be high enough level to defeat them. In order to raise up to that level, I need to fight a lot of things. And oh boy, that's not I do not play these games for their gameplay, though I do like the boost system and all that. I believe I've said that before. JRPGs in general are not these. Let me rephrase that. These turn-based JRPGs in which you kind of just click things on a menu aren't really my style of thing. I need to make that distinction because I guess you could technically say that. Well, that really gets into the argument of what an RPG is, which this episode is very much one of those sorts where I could begin bringing that up. But let's say for the sake of distinction, Kingdom Hearts would be sort of a JRPG that isn't turn-based, but you still use a menu for a good chunk of your special abilities and all that. It's been so long since I've done Kingdom Hearts games. I'll be covering those on the channel eventually. I have so many to catch up on. But another game to distinct from the Yakuza games. I enjoy the gameplay of those. And technically I guess they're technically a JRPG in the sense that for JRPGs, the RPG segment is mostly just that there's statistics. There's numbers that go up. And that's the thing, right? Is whenever I try to bring up the fact that role-playing games should be about role-playing and all that, should be about player choices, what players decide to do, stuff like that. Because they all, the derivative of tabletop role-playing games. And within those, if you say that you're role-playing, you're not sitting there crunching numbers. You're probably putting on a voice or something. You're doing something in character. So that's ultimately what I bring up whenever people talk about, oh, what is an RPG or what isn't an RPG. It's like whatever allows you to indulge in the character that you've made. Fallout New Vegas being my favorite RPG. Anyway, so grinding. My issues with grinding. In JRPGs, it's typically just doing the same monotonous combat over and over again. There's segments where I do the exact same moves as long as the characters go in the same order. And it just, when it's 3 to 5 combats in a row, taking up over 10 minutes, I'm doing the exact same thing over and over again. Because in order to break the enemies, it's the most optimal path to do so. And it's in a gameplay style that I just do not mesh well with this combat, which is funny, right? Because if the issue was just it's not that it's isometric or anything. I feel better about playing, say, Baldur's Gate, Disco Elysium, though Disco Elysium doesn't have combat, and so my issue is just the combat just doesn't appeal to me, but I do have possible solutions. Because if it's the monotonous combat and the fact that the combat doesn't really matter, which is another thing, right? Let's go back to New Vegas, my favorite RPG in general. In the base game, the vanilla game, no mods, none of the DLCs. I was at a point where I was like, man, I really need to bring up my levels because I want to get some perks and stuff. But I don't want to do some of these quests yet because there's certain, dialogue choices and the like that I'm not equipped to deal with my current build. So I was like, okay, I want to bring up my stats enough and, get some perks that'll allow me to... I can't quite remember if the one perk that doubles the effects of magazines was in the base game or it was from Old World Blues. I feel like it's from Old World Blues. Anyway, I would go to the Thorn in the outskirts of New Vegas the city. Is the Thorn technically? I think it's in West Side technically. Yeah, I think it's in the domain of West Side. And so I would just go in there and kill if I was lower level and didn't do all the quests yet. Were red scorpions an option? No, I think you needed to get their eggs in order to get the giant red scorpions. So I think I just did that quest line first, and then I went through again and I would kill red scorpions, and then once I was high enough level, I would just repeat Death Claws. But the gameplay was enough to get me in. The story, the lack of story, though, it was more monotonous, but it's sort of like, I guess if you play Call of Duty matches where you play just for the gameplay, you would enjoy that. But I haven't been able to do something like that in over a decade. Oh man, it's actually been like, oh shit, it's been like 12 years. Yeah. Oh, fuck. Yeah. I haven't really... Black Ops 1 was probably the last one where I played, because you could play with bots, and that was some decent fun. I would put on a Cade's Elephant album and just run through and kill bots on the shooting range map or whatever, the training map. That was always fun to do. Or like with my friends, we would do like themed things where we would run around with specific weapon sets and then do that or kill each other. That was decently fun. But with New Vegas, another way to, just killing in general levels you up. Right. And so I was getting that through killing those Death Claws. But another way, I could have done a bunch of the dungeons. I don't think I've ever fully done the Northern Powder Gangers quests where there's the two dudes and one of them wants to surrender to the NCR and the other one doesn't want to surrender to the NCR. I could have gotten XP from that. And that ties into the fact that I think one of the ways to fix my issues with grinding in JRPGs is simply how you get your XP. You see, you only get your XP, as far as I can tell from nearly every single JRPG I've ever played, and I've ever heard of. You get it from just killing things, from the random fights for the most part. You get some more from bosses and all that. And in the Yakuza, you in some of them you can get it from eating and stuff like that, where it like boosts your ability to get more XP. And I think that if they tied getting XP to completing quests, that would be far more interesting and far more engaging than just all the random fights. And I think that's another issue, is that the random fights pad out the length of the game, making it feel bigger and more worthwhile than it actually is. When half the game is just you grinding, that's just empty content that's not really worthwhile unless you're in for the game, just the combat itself. But when you're looking at it overall for its strengths and all that, for the things that are worthwhile for your dollar per hour entertainment, which is what I believe some reviewer talked about that a little while ago. But I remember in high school being like, I graduated in 2013. I remember saying even prior to that unless a game can provide as many hours of entertainment, as many dollars as you spend, it's not as worth it. Which of course excludes some games that are like $20 and they only last like 5 hours. But the experience can be so enriching from like indie games. The experience can be so enriching that it is worth that $20. In the same sense that trying to judge a movie by the same metric, or an album by the same metric, or even a book by the same metric, doesn't quite work out as well. Games, though, with the time investment in them, it is essentially, I want to get to the good shit, but I need to do all of this busy work to get to it. So I'd rather an 80-hour... Let me quickly check. I'm going to quickly check Steam and see how many hours into Octopath Traveler I have, and I'll estimate how many hours I have left. and then we'll see from there, roughly speaking, what my total will be. I believe on the How Long to Beat website, or whatever that website is called, said it was, 80 hours, and actually looking at my time, 61 hours currently. I just completed Tressa's playthrough, her story, so I have 7 more, and each one is going to probably take about 2 hours each, if you're including the time it takes to get to their town and the time to do it. So it's another 14 hours, so that's about 75 hours. And then I'm going to do all the side content stuff regarding side quests, as well as getting the 4 optional god ability what the hell is it called? The subclasses, like the secret jobs or whatever they're called. That's going to be another hour or 2 each. So yeah, I'm probably looking about 90 hours overall from those, and the secret boss I have to get to, because that's a boss rush, and I'm going to have to get everybody to level 50 or higher and make sure everybody's all maximized. Altogether, I would say okay, so if everybody's story takes roughly 2 hours each, that's 8 hours, and there's 8 of them, so... No, just wait. I've been sick today, so my brain is a bit frazzled, so let's see. 2 hours each, times 8 of them, that's 16, times... There's 4 chapters. So yeah, that's roughly 64 hours. But that's also including it's just a lot of just the same fights over and over again. So I think it's an issue of world building, tying the combat into the world, because with the New Vegas, right, is nearly every single enemy you fight makes sense for where they are, and they're tied to the world. There's encampments of enemies, there's nests of critters, there's a war going on, so there's the combatants from both sides, depending on who you're hostile to. But with Octopath, there's talks of, like, the lizard people are slavers and stuff, and they have tools, and like I've said before, the different beast folk seem to have tools, which implies a degree of intelligence in society, that it would have been interesting to see, oh, if you wipe out, man, I don't want to advocate for genocide, but you fight their big bad dude, and then you don't gotta fight their people anymore. Like, that would be an interesting way to do it. Like, you challenge their leader, and they fuck off. They stop trying to enslave people, or it would make sense for the ones that use tools and all that. The bird people have spears and all that. The frog people, the lizard dudes. So all those would go away if you defeat their leaders. If you go to, it'll be an optional boss, and that would be cool to do. And then for the critters and whatnot, taking out their nest or finding out why they've been so active. But then, yeah, that's another thing about world design, the points of light system in world design, where it's like the pockets of civilization are the only places that are safe enough, yet at the same time, it just seems like in order to get around the world, people need to be these heavily armed merchant warriors, these just caravans of just decked the hell out, just dudes wandering around with BFGs and all that just to get across the world. And sure, yeah, it can be fun for the player to get through and kill their way through, but at a certain point, it would make sense that the players can clear the roads and all that, and then the enemies don't respawn, and you'd get XP from doing those clear outs. Of course, that would require balancing that a lot of games don't have the time for, and also balancing is a tricky thing in the first place for RPGs, because you want to make sure the players can reach max level without having to... No, how do I word this? You want to make sure that they can reach max level, which I don't know what the max level for Octopath Traveler is, but you don't want them to have to keep... How do I say it? You want them to be able to reach max level and spend enough time as max level to appreciate it. But you don't want it to be like, oh, the entire last 20% of the game, you're not actively growing as a character. The last 10% or so, the last like 5 to 10 hours, that's fine to be like maxed out and get to test out your stuff on some optional bosses or the final boss. But I guess overall it's just a discussion of game design. And so JRPGs are just not designed in such a way, in general, there might be some JRPGs that are designed in a different way. They'll be more appealing to me and how I like to play games. But I guess, yeah, that's just the topic for this episode, yeah, is the grind. I don't like the grind. I prefer if things had more impact, had more meaning. I guess I'll see you next time.